Hey folks, welcome back to Abundant Life Homestead. Today we're going to be talking about hydraulic cylinders and how to obtain the information that we might need to replace a cylinder or to get a hydraulic cylinder repaired. And then we're going to go through the process of actually replacing a cylinder. Now right off the bat, there are several different types of hydraulic cylinders. Some of them that you and me, the average small homesteader, never really going to see. And others we rarely use, like a hydraulic ram in our bottle jacks, or maybe once or twice in our life we'll rent a crane that has telescoping hydraulics on it. Those kind of things are out of the scope of this video. What we're actually talking about today is the single and double acting hydraulic piston cylinders that we find on a lot of our tractors and outdoor equipment. More specifically today, we're going to be talking about and replacing this lift cylinder for the hitch on my Farmall A. I know. You may be a big fan of these old machines. Maybe you like to restore these old Farmalls. Some of you probably just had a moment of what in the heck is this monstrosity? I understand. But know that this tractor was restored and modified to its current condition long before I was born. I have plenty of reasons for keeping it the way it is. Maybe that's a story for another time, but for today, let's focus on the task at hand. Now this hydraulic cylinder is blown. It's got a bad seal on the inside. I know this because when I apply hydraulic power to raise my hitch up, my hitch quickly falls and all the fluid comes blowing out the breather. I don't want to make that mess out here just to prove it to you, so you'll have to trust me that this cylinder is blown. Now we can take this cylinder in, we can get it repacked, we can get it rebuilt. In the long run, that's what I'm going to do with this one. I've got an uncle that rebuilds hydraulics all the time. He'll be receiving this cylinder. But in the meantime, I've got a lot of work to do. I need another cylinder in replacement of this. The question is, how in the world do I know what to get to put in its place? Well, first things first, we take a good look at our hydraulic cylinder. We hope it's got a label on it. We hope that label's readable and that it's got a brand and part number on it. And if we're really lucky, that's all the information we need, right? So we take a look at this cylinder. It is a Chief brand, part number 214103I. I write that down in my notebook. I open my phone or sit down at the desktop. I type that into Google. I get almost no results. What gives? Well, in this particular instance, I can tell you from experience, Chief Hydraulics used to be a brand carried by Tractor Supply. I don't know if someone else carries them now. You can still order them through Tractor Supply, but the old part numbers are now defunct. They're no longer any good. If I really wanted an exact replacement, I can find a few of these older open box on eBay, but I don't really need to go that far and I don't really want to take that chance. So now what do? Well, we come back to our label and we look to see what else it says. Working pressure 2500 psi, bore times stroke times rod, 2 by 8 by 1.125 ASAE. That sounds like dimensions. We probably need those numbers. Well, what do those numbers mean? Or what if it's like this cylinder, or this cylinder, or this cylinder, or this cylinder, none of which have labels? Then what do? Now the first number in this sequence, in this case a 2, is our bore. Our bore is the inside diameter, the working area of the cylinder. Now we can't precisely measure that without taking the cylinder apart, right? Well, thankfully we don't have to be so precise. Manufacturers are kind to us in that for the most part in your small cylinders the bore size goes up in 1/2 inch increments. You have 1.5 inches, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5. Once you get to 4, the halves go away and it's just whole inch increments, and 5, 6. Anything bigger than that, you're on some big industrial equipment that's beyond the scope of what us small homesteaders are going to use. But since we know we don't have to be so precise, most of the time we can measure the outside diameter and then round down to the next increment. For that, even a hardly accurate, flimsy plastic caliper is good. So we look at this. I just moved it. So I put the calipers on this cylinder, I pull it off. It says 2 3/8. Well, 2 3/8, we round down to the next increment. We got a 2-inch bore. It's the same on these. I measure the same, 2 3/8, that's a 2-inch bore. Same, 2 3/8, that's a 2-inch bore. We come over here to the loader. We've got 1 7/8. That's 1.5 inch bore. Well, what if we don't have a pair of calipers, or we just can't fit a pair of calipers around the work area? Then what? Well, now is when that math they taught you in school that you swore you would never use as an adult comes into play. We know that with a circle, our circumference equals 2 times pi times r being our radius. We know that 2 times our radius is our diameter, so we divide both sides by pi and we get our circumference divided by pi equals our diameter. We want to measure our diameter. Take a little piece of string, get it in your work area, get it wrapped around your cylinder. One spot where the strings cross, make yourself a little mark. Now you're going to measure the distance between your marks. Got a mark there. Where's my other mark here? Right there. Distance between my marks is about 7 3/4 inches, 7.75. Divide that by pi, you're going to get 2.4 something. Round that down, you've got a 2-inch bore. Easy stuff, right? Well, now that we know our bore, the next number in the sequence is our stroke. Our stroke is the distance traveled from fully retracted to fully extended. In this case, the label of this one tells us it has an 8-inch stroke. Well, how do we measure that to know? We don't want to try to take a ruler and stick it here on the rod and measure it. It doesn't always work out right. The best thing to do is normally measure from the center of each mounting pin, measure the distance when it's fully extended, measure the distance when it's fully retracted. Though sometimes that's easier said than done. On this one, with it being fully extended, from center to center, I'm at 28 1/4 inch. I'll write that down on my paper because I may need that later. Now, with this particular one, I don't want to make this mess. I could disconnect it and collapse it by hand. I'll show you that on this one. With a lot of our hydraulic cylinders, we can measure the stroke of the cylinder after it's been disconnected from the machine. With no hydraulic power or pressure, we can cycle this piston by hand. So first we make sure it's all the way in, and it is. We measure it out, and normally to the 1/4 inch is good enough. You don't have to be precise on here the same way you don't have to be precise on the bore. And we've got 17 1/4. 17 1/4 inches. Then I can take this, fully extend it, measure again. Now I'm at 28 1/4. 28 1/4 minus 17 1/4. This cylinder has an 11-inch stroke. But other times a measurement like that is impossible to get. With this particular single action cylinder, the side that does not get hydraulic power has a spring constantly pushing it back to the retracted position. That spring, to stretch that spring out, requires more force than my body has, and I would seriously hurt something before I was able to pull that out. So if you can with one like this, you're going to pretty much have to put hydraulic power to it. Mount one end, leave the other end free in case there's mechanical stops. Measure it when it's fully retracted, put power to it, measure it when it's fully extended. I can tell you, just like that one though, I've measured this one in the past, and this is a 2x8, 2-inch bore, 8-inch stroke cylinder. Okay, now we've got our bore, we've got our stroke. The third number in this sequence is our rod diameter. The rod is this part right here. It's what transfers the force that's put into this cylinder to another part. This does our pushing and our pulling for us. We measure the diameter the same way we did the bore, except we're just looking for the outside. On this one, the label says 1.125 inches. I put my calipers on this rod. I get 1 1/8 inch on these crappy calipers. 1/8 of an inch is 0.125. It's a 1.125 inch. This cylinder here we looked at a minute ago is exactly the same. Right on the dot at 1 1/8 inch, 1.125. But not all of your 2-inch cylinders are going to be that way. You'll find more differences and more precision in your rod size than you will in your bore sizes. They're generally down to the 1/8 of an inch. This cylinder we looked at, even though it's got the same 2-inch bore and it's got the same 8-inch stroke, at 1 1/8 inch is too big. This has a 1-inch rod. We need to know that when we go to order one. Alright, now we've got all of our standard dimensions. Sounds like we've got a whole lot of information. We sit back down with our phone or at our computer, we type into Google, we want a hydraulic cylinder that's 2-inch by 8-inch by 1.125. This time we get a whole lot more results, but we almost immediately notice that very few of them look exactly like the cylinder we're getting ready to replace. Even this label is not going to have all of the information we need. We got to come back out, take another look at the cylinder. Okay, the first thing you might notice among the cylinders that are available out there is their overall design. This cylinder we're working with today seems to have a cage built around it. This one does not. This is what's called a welded cylinder. This is a tie rod cylinder. Tie rod has absolutely nothing to do with the steering on your car. The name literally means there are metal rods tying your end caps together. With a welded cylinder, one end is always welded shut. The other end is either threaded in or in this case held in with a snap ring. Advantages of a welded cylinder is they fit in much tighter spaces. Disadvantages, they're generally a lot more expensive to get rebuilt. Advantages of your tie rod cylinder is they're usually easier to repair. You can do it at home and much cheaper to buy and repair. Disadvantage is they usually need a lot more clearance because of these end caps. It's usually perfectly fine to replace a tie rod cylinder with a welded cylinder if you find the right one, but it is very rarely okay to replace a welded cylinder with a tie rod cylinder. Let's come over here and take a look at our loader. We see there's a little bit of space in there. We've got plenty of room around this end of the cylinder. We've got some room around there. We think we might be able to find a tie rod cylinder that would fit in that until we fully raised our bucket and we see just how much of this cylinder has to go up inside of that frame. A tie rod cylinder, you'd have to have much longer tang back here. We'd end up with a shorter cylinder. We'd really start affecting our lift height and angle very quickly. So we almost never want to replace a welded cylinder with a tie rod type. Here we've got plenty of room. We could use either way. I go with the cheaper option. I get a tie rod type cylinder. But that's not the only difference. This cylinder has two ports. One has a hose, one has a breather. This cylinder has two ports, a hose going to each one. This cylinder only has one port. So now what are we looking at? Well, this one in particular, this is a single acting only cylinder. This only powers to push the rod. This one, these type in particular I already mentioned, have springs in here that force them to retract. These with the two ports, these are double acting cylinders. Some of these we can use as a single, so they're single or double acting cylinders. Most of the time we can do that. Sometimes, like with these orange ones, those come off my backhoe. I need pressure in both directions. I need double acting cylinders. Other times we can put a breather on one side. We only want or need power on the other. With this particular application, with this tractor, I only want the power to lift the hitch. I don't want down pressure on it. I don't even want the spring pressure of a single action. So I want to get a single double acting cylinder. So we add single double acting tie rod type cylinder to our list, but we already noticed there's a lot more to look at here. The end of this rod appears to mount very differently than the end of this rod. This end of the cylinder appears to mount very differently than the end of this cylinder. Appears to mount very differently than the end of the cylinders on the bucket. Now, there are a whole lot of different types of mounting options for both ends of your cylinders. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're different. We'll cover a few here, but there's just no way to get them all, and I don't really have examples of all of them. Take a close look at this one first, though. This cylinder on both ends has what's called a clevis type mount. Just like a clevis that we'd use to attach a chain to the tractor. It's got these ears with holes in it. Your mounting point goes in the center. A pin holds everything together. This cylinder down here has what's typically called a drill through mount. Even though they look differently, up here on the rod end, both of these cylinders have what's called a cross tube mount. We go over here on our loader bucket. This one has what looks to be like the opposite of a clevis mount. This one is commonly called a tang mount. Has the ears in your actual mounting location and a single ring on the end of your cylinder. And this one is somewhere between that drill through and tang type. It's probably a drill through, but it reduces in size instead of staying the same size. We come back up here to the tractor and we can see an option with this cylinder is we also have a threaded end. Now here's the thing, just because I only have an example of a threaded end on a rod, that doesn't mean that's the only place you're going to find it. You can find male or female threads on either end of this cylinder. You can find cross tubes on either end of a cylinder, drill throughs on either end. And as you can see, any given cylinder doesn't have to have the same type of mount on both sides. We've got a drill through and a cross tube. You may have a cross tube and a clevis mount. And there's many other types that we don't have examples of here. You got flange mounts and trunnion mounts and ball sockets and spherical bearings. So if you don't recognize it, try to find a chart online, or take a picture of your cylinder, take it into a parts dealer, find out what the mounting type of both ends on your cylinder is. It's very important to know if you're going to replace one. So now we're going to add clevis type mounts to our list of information we need when we go to order this cylinder. There's only a couple more things we need to know at this point. Our next piece of pertinent information is the diameter of our mounting pins. Even for the same size cylinders, sometimes these mounting pins can be different sizes. We can measure these out. I know from already measuring them that the diameter of our mounting pins on both ends of this cylinder is 1 inch. This cylinder takes the same 1 inch mounting pin on each end. But this cylinder takes a 5/8 inch on one end and a 3/4 on the other. Something we need to know. And then the last piece of information to add to our list, we already measured this earlier. As we're looking at our spec sheet when we're trying to buy a cylinder, we want either the fully extended or fully retracted length or both. We measured this one out earlier. It was 28¼ inches. Okay, so now we've got a whole list of information, everything we can see, everything we can measure. We should have everything we need to find a direct replacement for this cylinder. I'm going to go looking for a single double acting 2x8 by 1.125 inch hydraulic cylinder with clevis ends. I'm going to open up the spec sheet. I'm going to make sure it has 1-inch pins. I'm going to make sure the retracted length is 20¼ inches. The extended length is 28¼ inches. That's exactly what I did. I found one at our local Tractor Supply. I picked it up this morning. Let's get closer to the barn and see if we can get it changed out. Okay, we've got our new cylinder that is all the same specs as the cylinder we're replacing. The next and most important thing we want to do is block up the moving parts of this hydraulic system. Not only does it make it a little easier to work on, but it makes it safer. In my case here with that hitch, even though there's some wiggle here, there's still a lot of tension with the weight pulling down on that hitch. If I were to go ahead and knock these pins out, something would give, something would jump, swing, slam down. I could either do some damage to the machine, or I could do some damage to myself. In a different circumstance, like the planter that we were blocking up before the tractor show last year, if I were to go and take hydraulic hoses without blocking that up, everything would have come swinging, slamming down. Somebody probably would have got hit in the shin with a cutting blade. So it's really important to make sure whatever position this is in when you're going to start removing hydraulics, you lock it in that position. And what I'm going to do with this hitch, I'm going to lift it a little bit with the Kubota bucket, and I'm going to put a jack stand underneath the bottom of the hitch. That should take the tension off here. That should give us a good, easy, safe workspace. Not exactly in a level location there, am I? You may want to move that just a little more. There we go, now it's blocked up. You can tell the tension is off of it because the pins are easy to move. Now the configuration of the parts you're working on is going to kind of determine what you do next. With this cylinder, everything out in the open, easy to get to. I'm going to pull the hoses off first. With other cylinders, like, well, what we showed on the bucket earlier, those I would want to pull my pins first, get it out of the way, and then pull the hoses off. This is going to be easy to remove the hoses here, get them out of the way, and after I put the new cylinder in, get it in place, I can replumb everything and not have to worry about trying to hold on to this while I'm turning that, because it's already held in place. So to take the breather valve off, I think I'm just going to use me a little pipe wrench here. And everything on these is going to be MPT, pipe threaded. Now I've got the problem where I kind of want this, I want that brass nipple, but I don't want to damage it because I don't have another brass nipple to put on the new one. Oh, wrong way. See if that'll come out of there without digging into those threads. Real nice and easy. So if I can't recover the nipple and I need to get another one, it's not going to be a specialized part. It's just, what is that, probably 1/2 inch threaded pipe thread, 1/2 inch pipe thread. So I got chewed it up a little bit. We put a little tape on it, it might be all right. Now the other side, to take the hose off, pretty much the fittings on all your hydraulic hoses are going to be, they're going to work in the same manner. We squeeze this part here with a pair of channel locks or pair of pliers, and where we got the nut here, once that comes loose, that'll start to spin freely, kind of like the end of a garden hose. Let me get where I'm going to squeeze that, but not too terribly tight. There we go. And this particular fitting is a 7/8 inch. And we should be able to hold the hose in place and turn that connector. And as soon as we get this out, we're going to want to tie it off up here somewhere, keep it above that tank. Otherwise, we're going to lose some fluid all over the ground. I've already done too much of that this year. Grab a couple bungee cords here. I think I can probably just bungee it right here to the shifter. Now it's going to be up and out of the way. And just like that other elbow, we're going to want to take this elbow off. We'll use it on the new one. And just like the other one, the nipple's not going to come with it. Oh, that's tight. That's probably going to mar my threads a little bit there. Okay, we got all the hoses and fittings off. Now with this cylinder, we've got pins here. Pretty easy to clip off. The new one down here has hairpins. But that also makes the pins just a little longer. I thought we had the tension off that. Yeah, don't need to beat it out of there. Come up here, do the same on this one. Move that out of the way. And compress it down. Yep, didn't need to pull both sides of that. But sitting here. Make sure our ports are facing the outside the way they were on the old one. Got one pin in. Now I will probably have to pull that plug before I can manage to pull this out. Yeah, I'll have to pull those plugs. That's a hex-headed pipe plug, and this is 5/16. Now we'll see if I can run this new cylinder out by hand. I may not be able to. I may not have enough strength to do it. There it goes. All right. A little more. It had a little bit of oil from the factory in it. You know, sitting here looking at this and knowing how close this end gets to the tire and stuff down here, I think I'm not going to use the new one with the hairpin in it back here. I'm going to go ahead and put an old pin back in. There we go. Up here, it shouldn't be such a big problem. There we go. All right, so I got these nipples cleaned up. I checked them out real good. One of them I did kind of nick up a bit more than I would like to, but we're gonna put it down here on the breather end. On this end, there's literally never any pressure. We just have this fitting with a little hole in it, lets air in and out, while keeping dirt, water, and everything else from getting sucked up into that cylinder. So that'll be no big deal. And what we're going to do, we're going to put a little bit of tape on these fittings, Teflon tape. See if I can even use this stuff in this wind. Wind's picking up today. It's supposed to storm. I'm really hoping to get this done before those storms come in. Couple wraps of Teflon tape there. Get it started by hand. Couple wraps on this side. And then tightening that fitting will tighten both ends of that nipple. That's plenty for that part to do its job. Same deal on this end. Oh, and I guessed that these were 1/2 inch when I pulled them out. Yeah, I measured them while I was cleaning them. They're 3/8 inch pipe thread. That will probably be pretty standard on most any small hydraulic cylinder that you buy anyway. Probably should have stopped at that round, but we'll go just a little more in here. Alright. And that should be plenty tight. Our hose back up under here, bring it in the same way we did before, the same way we pulled it out. This has got old tape in it. Keep those little bits of tape away from that end. The wind's starting to pick up a little more. That's probably good. Now I'm going to grab a funnel and some hydraulic oil. We're going to top off our hydraulic tank here, and then we're going to try this out. Now with this, since it's electric hydraulic, I should just be able to actuate it. Oh, had a bunch of air bubbles up in there. Didn't think about that. That whenever you're using single action, you want this whatever cylinder is going to be filling, you want it closed before you fill up your tank. I did that. There's a whole bunch of air in this line that just got pushed back through there and made my tank bubble up again. I'll probably do it 2 or 3 times till it works all the air out. Well, there you have it, folks. Everything you need to know, or at least everything I know about changing out a bad hydraulic cylinder. We had several examples today. I've got one that I can add to all those backhoe cylinders. They're going to be getting rebuilt soon, and I can get the farm all back to work. Appreciate you watching and joining me today. If you learned anything, let me know below, either by just giving a like or put a comment to add your own experiences, or if you have any questions. And if you find yourself coming back to the channel often, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Be doing you and me both a favor. I greatly appreciate it. That's all I've got though, so until next time, just keep on nourishing your dreams, cultivating your passions, embracing the beauty of God's creation. Hope you have a wonderful and blessed day. We'll see you then.